hand it over to Molly Mulhern from CamdenCAN to introduce our speakers.
Great. Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Camden Public Library. As Julia said, my name is Molly. It was one of the founders with some other folks of a group called CamdenCAN. That stands for Climate Action Now. We are proud to be here tonight with the group that is running an energy coach program in our town. It's part of a two-town Camden Rockport Community Resilience Partnership grant. We've got a program manager who's in the back. Marina Schaffler is our program manager. One of the things we're working on right now is creating a team of coaches to go into homes and help people figure out how to make their homes more comfortable, among other things. And you'll hear a little bit more about that, I think, maybe at the end, but there's a lot of material out on the tables to find out more about that. So this is the kickoff of the training for that. This will be videotaped. It will be as part of the library for the energy coach training that we will put up for trainers. It'll be as part of the Camden Public Library, CamdenCAN, Camden Talks Climate events. And I'm proud to say that we have several more events coming up. One in particular on November 13th, which is Camden Talks Climate, which is how what's in your energy bill. And it's going to be with Emily Rochford, who's from Maine Community Power. She's going to help people understand all of the charges that we're now seeing, especially if you own part of a community solar. She's going to explain what's all happening there. If people come with their bills, there will be one-on-one help that we can provide for looking at those. And then eventually Maine Community Solar will come back in the spring and we'll talk about municipal solar and perhaps ways that towns like Camden and Rockport can create municipal solar that is held in a way that helps people who are struggling with their energy bills get more reasonably priced energy. So that's 11/13, you'll hear that. There's two public programs on the energy coaching program, one on November 6th on home electrification and one on November 20th, which is on heat pumps. There are training sessions, but they're open to the public. They're at 5:30 at the Parker Room, which is in the bottom of the Rockport Opera House. And you can find those on the CamdenCAN.org website. I'm not sure if we have any other documents that have that printed out here, but you can also email the CamdenCAN website and we can give you more detail. And then I just want to, before I introduce Brian, say that in December, we will be having a program, Camden Talks Climate, that is another part of this grant. And it's about emergency preparedness, and it's called Preparing for Extended Emergencies or something along those lines. And it's going to be a discussion of how people in Camden and Rockport and in any town really can start to think about how to prepare for whether it's a weather emergency or a lack of water emergency, any number of things. So that will be December 11th. So without further ado, before I introduce Brian, I just want to ask by a show of hands, how many residents here are in Camden? And if just put your hand up if you're from Camden. So that's like, okay. And I can't really ask the online crew because we don't really know who the online crew is, so I won't ask the online. But we're glad you're here. People from Rockport? Who's here? There you go. Thank you. Barbara's always keeping me in line. So we have two presenters tonight. The first is Brian Robinson from Evergreen. Many of you know Brian. He's been in the community for probably almost as long as I have, maybe longer. We pass each other on the slopes at the Snow Bowl quite a bit. Brian's a good volunteer at the Ragged Mountain Recreation Center in all sorts of ways. But for tonight, he's bringing to us his expertise as an energy advisor extraordinaire. He has helped me a lot. He's helped a lot of folks to sort of think about their homes. So we're looking forward to that. And our second presenter will be Connie Evans. And after Brian speaks, we'll have a few questions for Brian, and then we'll have Connie from WindowDressers help us. So without any further ado, Brian Robbins.
Excuse me. Thank you, Molly. Where do I need to be to
Oh, you're fine.
Am I good? Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You tell me where you are.
That's good.
Okay, excellent. All right, thanks very much. That was a lovely introduction. It's great to see you all here. I'm excited to give you a short presentation that is kind of an overview of one way that you can think about your home as an energy system. We've got lots of things and lots of ways that we're using energy, but our residential energy use, does anybody have any sense of what percentage of the energy use of the country is demanded by buildings as opposed to, say, cars and other things?
Well, I don't know, it's like 60, 50 around.
Yeah, I think it's something like 40%. So it's not insignificant. Vehicle usage, is quite large. I don't know what else is demanding lots of energy, but there are other things.
Cows.
Cows, well,
No, that's not.
they need energy because they're eating alfalfa and things, right? Yeah, so they're,
This is residential or just buildings in general?
I think it's all buildings is what I recall.
Main climate action plan.
Yep.
47%.
Yeah, so, again, it's a big part. The interesting thing is that all of us are living in a home. Many of us, I suspect, are home owners. So you control that and you can make that change. You may not be able to make, IDEX change what they're doing down in Westbrook, big manufacturing facility. But you can certainly make changes in your own home if you choose to do so. And I know many of you have, because I've been into a couple of your homes already, as well as a few others. So tonight's talk is entitled "Your Home as an Energy System." It's just kind of a new way to think about it. And the subtitle is "Demand, Supply, and Source." Oh my! If you remember that, let me see if I know how to advance this. Do I go down? Do I do what?
And I have to click, and now you can use the arrow keys.
Oh, okay, beautiful. So as Molly said, I'm with Evergreen Home Performance. We're here in the Mid-Coast in Rockland and also down in Portland. And we've been doing this work since 2006 as the first home performance company in the state of Maine. We predate Efficiency Maine by a couple of years, and have, I can say this without seeming too apropos, we just recently received an award for helping more Maine homeowners receive Efficiency Maine rebates through the residential program than any other contractor in the entire state. Something of which we're very proud. 353 or 354 homes last year, which is the last fiscal year, June to June, as they measure it. So we've got a little bit of experience, put it that way. So what are some common things that that consume energy in our homes? What are common ways that we're consuming energy in our homes? What are some of the ways? Heating. Okay, space heating, right? Is that what you're thinking of? Heating up the space so we're warm and comfy?
Appliances?
Appliances. What sort of appliance are you thinking of, Nancy?
Washers, dryers, fridges, freezers.
Sure, things that we're plugging in, right? Yeah. How else are we using energy in our homes? Hot water. We'd like to, most of us want to take a hot shower or something like that, or a hot bath. We want to wash our dishes with hot water. We might do our clothes with hot water. Great. Anything else?
And air conditioning.
Cooling, right. So we might want to pull heat out of our houses and dump it into the environment in the summertime. Absolutely.
Lighting. Technology.
Thank you. Lighting, yes. Right. We're not plugging those in because most of them are wired in. We're turning on a switch. Nancy again?
Technology. I think about the number of devices that we charge every day.
Yeah, the good news is that most of the devices have gotten much, much more energy efficient as we go. Our light bulbs are very rarely, if we put our hand up here, this isn't really hot. 10 years ago, that would have been a halogen bulb and I'd be burning my hand up there. So we've come a long way with the technology, which has been great. Much of the technology inside our house for heating and for hot water, particularly, are pretty antiquated. We're burning.
Category there, stupidity and waste. And by that, I mean like leaving the attic lights on when no one's there and you're still spending using like air conditioner to cool them.
Yep.
Leaving the basement lights on when you're not there, the light bulbs are gonna be more efficient, but you're still. You don't see
Absolutely.
any improvement in quality of light by leaving them on.
Exactly. So you've hit the nail on the head, Krem. So we talked about this, the home energy use, roughly 55% space heating. That's the big fish in that barrel. 15% roughly is hot water, and the balance is other electrical, cooking, other demands, plug demand, lighting, et cetera, et cetera. Now, yes, some of us are now plugging in our vehicles to charge from home and so forth. But that's, and that's a little bit different in that we're just passing that energy through into the car. We're not actually sort of using it inside the home. So this is something that surprises many people. At least that's been my experience when I've presented this before. Many homes are wasting 90+% of their energy. We can easily reduce that in many cases by 75%. When you tell someone or they hear that I can reduce my energy use by 75%, minds are exploding. They're just not believing that it's possible because we've been taught to think about incremental change. Jimmy Carter, for those of you old enough, and you all look old enough to remember him, right? It was put on a sweater and turn down the thermostat. Speed limit went from whatever it was before I was driving, down to 55, right? All of these things were ways that we could reduce waste. By going 55 instead of 70, we burn less gas per mile. We still get there. We pay for it a little bit more in time, but we save energy by doing it. So we reduce, that was one way to reduce waste. Putting on your sweater, turning down the thermostat, same thing. That was reducing waste. Were you less comfortable? Maybe, depending on the quality of your sweater, I suspect. So, demand. What is it? What creates it? I'm going to encourage you to use 3 terms tonight. The first of which is demand. Demand is what you lost and what you need to replace. Can also be defined as unnecessary waste. So if we think of heating, we're space heating. We want our space to be warm. We want the table to be warm when we put our arm on it. We want the couch to be warm when we sit on it. We want the air to be warm as we move around in our houses. If we had a perfect house, we'd heat it once in the beginning of the season and we'd be great for the entire season, right? If we didn't waste anything, we didn't lose anything. But that's not the case. So that is, demand is waste. And the same with hot water. How many times have you turned on the hot water in your house to wash your hands, but you never actually got hot water on your hands? Studies have been done. Something like 85% of the time, people turn the hot water tap on because that's what they want, but we're not patient enough to wait for it. So what happens? That hot water goes in the pipe and then it just sits there because it never actually reaches the faucet. So you didn't really ever use that warm water for the purpose for which you intended it. You just burned some dead dinosaurs, perhaps, to create the hot water that you didn't end up using.
So that's unnecessary demand.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So I think we should say unnecessary demand is waste.
Perfect. Rephrase it. I love it. If I could do it quickly, I'd change that. But it's, as I say, I would yeah, whether we call it waste or we call it demand, that's the way I want to think of. I'd love us to think about it for tonight, because it's just kind of changing your mindset a bit, I hope. Supply. This is the second term. What is supply? We think of we think of the hot air, just because that's 55% of the, the space heating. Unnecessary waste is what leaving our house and going to the outdoors. It's heating Camden or Rockport or Crehaven, depending on where you are, although not much. But so what is supply? Well, I would define supply as what you add to replace what you've lost. So our supply devices are things like our boiler or our furnace or our hot water heater. Those are the kind of big supply things, right? They're shiny objects often. And the third is source. This is, what are you feeding that supply? What are some of the sources that we might have to feed some of the supply that then creates the energy that we then waste? Is that better? Waste, yeah. Okay. So what are some of the sources of our actual energy in our homes? Oil, so fossil fuels, oil, electricity,
Solar gain.
propane, wood, bio bricks, maybe someone's burning coal. I don't know, could be anything. We're not burning much peat. But so it's how you power the supply. That's how you power the source. Sorry, I did this late last night. So
electricity on top of that list, because it's not the actual source.
well, it's the source, that it's the way it comes into your home.
Right.
But you're absolutely right, because electricity could be generated in any number of ways. It could be solar, it could be wind, it could be tidal, it could be a dam, or
It's used a lot, misused a lot.
Right.
People think electricity itself is equivalent.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and it sometimes it comes from oil, or in our case, in Maine, a lot of our energy, particularly in the wintertime, is natural gas plants that are, so we're burning natural gas. None of us in the mid-coast have natural gas in our houses, because it doesn't make sense to bring a pipeline here, because we're too rural. Just doesn't really make sense. The only real user of natural gas that I'm aware of is a Carrageenan plant. I can't remember what they call it now, down in Rockland. FMC, and they've got tractor trailers coming and going every day or every other day with compressed natural gas. They made that conversion, it's probably 10 years ago now, because natural gas is much less expensive than propane. So again, demand, that's what you've lost and need to replace, or it's unnecessary waste. Supply is what you add to replace what you've lost, and source is how you power the supply. So using this rubric, we can begin to understand, how do we get to those enormous energy savings? How do we reduce all of this, as much of this unnecessary waste as possible? And I would propose that the way to do it is to start by reducing unnecessary demand. So stop heating the outdoors. Stop dumping as much water down the sink from your shower with a more efficient shower head. So often, things that we are going to reduce that waste with means our demand shrinks. Now we've got a smaller problem to solve. We can't get rid of all of the unnecessary waste. It's not physically possible. And the window dressers are one way that we help to do that. That helps the windows dramatically, because it's like adding a brand new window inside the old one. And it's great. And there's lots of other ways to do it that we'll go into. But once we've reduced that demand, then we've got a smaller supply that we need less supply. And then we can decide what is efficient for our supply. Do we want to switch maybe from an oil-fired boiler that is the technology that was developed like in the 1930s and 40s for the modern boiler, and move up to something that was more 21st century, like a heat pump, for example, that runs on electricity. Now, as Beatty pointed out, depends what we're using to generate that electricity, but we'll get to that because that's the source. So if we can cut our demand, let's just say we cut our demand in half, then we only need half as big a supply. So maybe I don't need 3 heat pumps, maybe I only need 2. Well, that's pretty nice, because then that's all that metal and all that technology that's in there that we didn't have to produce and have sitting in our homes and pay for, that we're not using and don't need. The heat pump that isn't in your house can never use energy. True story, one of my employees, her husband worked for a very reputable solar company, the largest in the state of Maine, and she put heat pumps in her house, downstairs and up. Subsequent to that, she hired Evergreen to come in and insulate the upstairs of her home. You know how many times she's needed to run the heat pump in her second floor since then? Then she came to work for us. She's now one of my salespeople. It's a great story. She can, it's fantastic. But that's the reality. And that's what I want you to think about, is if you want to get your pickup truck more efficient, the first thing you need to do is unload the dang bricks out of the back of it. Because you don't need to haul those all over the place. Unload those, and now, now you're in a much better place. And so once you've figured out reducing your demand, then you can have the smart supply, and then you can figure out a clean source if you so choose. What would be a clean source for your energy that's going to create your supply? Solar. You could have, where could you have solar, Molly?
Roof, freestanding.
Yeah. You can even buy an Amish barn that they'll deliver that's already got it pre-wired and ready to go. Fantastic. What are other ways you could get a clean source if it wasn't you're owning your own solar? You can join a solar co-op. Yeah, absolutely. You could buy a share and get your share of your, of that to energize your own house. Terrific. Any other ways you can get clean?
Wind.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the options, and there's so many of them, I've lost track, but with your energy bill from CMP, we're all in CMP territory here. I don't know about you all out on Crete. You don't have any. You got to have your own solar panels out there. But you may be able to choose a wind power source for your energy, buy your electrons from a wind farm somewhere. So that's possible. In Maine itself, I think it's 60% of our energy that we generate in the state of Maine is from renewable sources. There we go.
Whether it's ground source or air, it's like, so you're getting some of the energy from the air or the ground.
You could get some energy from the ground, absolutely. And we all get energy from the ground in our houses every day of the year. It's called your basement or your slab. Wherever you're connected to the ground, you're either getting or you're either receiving or transferring energy there. So that's the rubric: demand, supply, and source that I'd encourage you to think about, because sequencing really matters. That story I told about my employee, that really happens. And that's a tragedy, because we then overinvested our resources in something that we didn't need. And that is kind of the epitome of waste. And how many people here love to waste things? You in the back. Yeah, of course, nobody does. So, again, we talked about this a little bit, more than 2/3 of Maine households, and this is a slightly old slide, I think it's 60% now, use oil as their primary energy source for home heating. Still is larger than any other state in the union. Again, why? We're remote, we survive on what we call delivered fuels. We don't have the pipeline to deliver us that natural gas. And in 2019, 80% of Maine's electricity net generation came from renewable sources, and the largest of which was hydro, on a percentage basis.
Are they counting
Pardon?
are they counting biomass?
Well, again, this was 2019, so it's different now. I think that the people that did this, and I can't remember where I pulled that statistic, I assume they were correct. It was from a reputable.
No, I didn't mean, call it biomass. For renewable
Oh, yeah,
gas
I think so. Yeah, I would think, absolutely. The interesting thing is when we think of fuel oil or propane, does anybody know the last time that we harvested some kind of liquid fuel or gas fuel like that, aside from the biomass, in the state of Maine? There's a sperm whale in like 1890 or something. I mean, literally, that was the last time. And I can tell you, I actually found a 1-gallon can of sperm whale oil in a basement in Rockland about 15 years ago. It's unbelievable. Apparently, it's an incredible lubricant. It's what they used on trains and things and all kinds of things. It was just an incredible lubricant. At any rate, I was blown away. I was like, I cannot believe I found this. Anyway, so given the work that I do, I'm going to focus a little bit now on where are the places within your house that you can stop that unnecessary energy waste. So we think of our home, this is a schematic, so you may not have all these features, but you're linked to the ground, and the ground wants to be around 50 degrees, roughly speaking, once you get 4 feet below grade, kind of throughout the year. So in the wintertime, that's a little bit of a positive, because it's warmer than the outdoor air, and in the summer, it's a little bit of a positive because it's cooler than the outdoor air, right? And so we've got places where air is leaking in and out. You can see that at the top there with the red arrows. That's kind of warm air that leaks out. Why does it leak out on the upper half of the building? Anybody know?
Heat rises.
Wrong. Any other ideas? What actually rises?
Lower than.
Thank you. Warm air rises. There are some physicists who would say cold air falls, warm air doesn't rise.
I think that's what you meant.
I agree, but I'm trying to keep you all awake and alive. But
Lower density material rise.
exactly, and so when we warm air, the electrons are bouncing more, they get further spaced apart, and it rises. So warm air tends to leak out of the top half of our house, and then it gets replaced by cold air that gets literally sucked in the lower half of our house. There's an area in the middle somewhere where theoretically, if you opened a window and there was no wind and you didn't have your dryer on, you didn't have your range hood on, you didn't have your bath fan on, no air would leak in or out. Because in order for air to move, you need 2 things. You need an aperture or opening, and you need a difference in pressure. So the warm air creates this pressure difference, and it's insidious. You cannot find those air leaks in your house by walking around. Oh, let me see, it's a leak over here. Why? Because of this. Put your hand near your face and take a nice deep breath in. Did you feel that air move? No. Now breathe out. Did you feel that air move? So I've never had a customer tell me that they feel a lot of air leaks in the 2nd floor of their home. Does that mean the air isn't leaking in there or leaking out there? No, they just don't feel it. No one complains about leaky windows on the 2nd floor. unless the wind is really humming. So this is where this thing can mix us up sometimes. So that's airflow, and then the other thing that we need, my finger isn't long, I don't know where I can be to reach back and show you this. I can't really do it, I need a pointer, but that picture in the upper section there, that home envelope, that red line, that's the line at which we want to have a tight air boundary and also thick, fluffy stuff. Insulation to stop the heat loss. So we want to stop the air movement because the air brings heat and moisture and things with it. And we want to stop the thermal transfer to the outdoors. That's that think of that red line as the warm blanket, the blanket you want around everything. And it needs and wants to be very continuous. It may be thicker up in the attic than it is in the walls, but we need it everywhere. How many of us grew up in a house that looked like this with cinder blocks or stone or concrete that you could see from the inside? I did. Yeah. How much insulation did that foundation have? That much.
The R value of this concrete, which is very low.
Which is very low. Yeah, it's like a pane of glass. If you knew it was all glass, that would be the first window you'd replace, right? So this is where, again, this thing can get in the way of progress. So the hardest thing to change is here. And you all, if you choose to become energy coaches, or if you just take the message to your friends and neighbors, you can help people get past this obstruction quite easily. This is not really all that good. I'm not gonna go there. Air leakage. This is kind of, again, a schematic, a little diagram, give you some of the percentages of where we lose things, where we lose this, where air leaks in and out and its effect. And you can see this through the windows. That's, again, second half of tonight, we'll be talking about a really efficient way to help improve those. But windows at 16% aren't going to solve all your problems either. And none of these, no one thing will.
Are
Yeah.
you talking about infiltration or are you talking about?
Oh, well, this is air, this one is all about air leakage. So 38% of the air is leaking through cracks in the walls, windows, and doors.
Cracks.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
Yeah, and this says through the windows, I think that means through the window assembly itself, where you have a double hung window and the sashes move. In order for the sashes to move, you have to have some slop, right? Because if it were airtight, you couldn't move it.
So it's not the window pane, it's the cracks.
Yeah.
So Brian,
exactly.
you're talking specifically about loss through
This is,
air transfer, not through.
this is, yeah,
conduction.
this,
Not conduction through the walls.
right.
So you're gonna tell us what percentage of the heat loss, total heat loss is air leakage compared to thermal
So
conduction through the walls?
it depends on the house.
Well, yeah,
And we have to have some air leakage in most houses because most houses don't have a fresh air ventilation system built in. So if we hermetically seal this room, we'd be fine because it has supply and return built into it because it's a commercial building and it's required. But single family homes, even multifamily homes, the code didn't require it. It does now in essence, but most houses we're reliant upon air leakage for fresh air and to dilute pollutants and things like that. Anybody know what the single largest source of air pollution in your home is? No, cooking. If you could smell food, that's air pollution. That's particulates in the air. They go and get trapped in your lungs. Anybody know what the?
No, chicken, vaporize is what you're smelling, but if you're cooking propane, that's, you're gonna get the propane.
Well, you're getting
Yeah.
hydrocarbons, you're getting sulfates of nitrogen oxides and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of stuff that happens there. So again, there's a whole host of things we could spend 3 more nights going through this, but I want to move a little more quickly here. This is a sign of air leakage. Some of you, if you've ever been up into your attic, and this, unfortunately, if we turn the lights off for just a sec, is that possible? Because it's hard to see this here, but you'll, once the lights go down, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. So this fluffy pink stuff, this is the way it was born. It was all pink and rosy, just like a little baby. But look at this piece that I pulled off. Well, actually, it was a ghost because there's no hair attached there. That's my little spooky head. Halloween. That piece of fiberglass was over this, what we call a can light or a high hat, because it looks like, you know, Abe Lincoln's top hat. And you can see the signs of the air leakage there. It's not that there was a fan that's pulling this. This was that insidious loss of air from that warm air rising, and it carried with it the dust of life, and it deposited it on the fiberglass. So we can see dead to rights. There's a lot of leakage there. So you can imagine every time there's a wire coming up, there's a vent pipe coming up that allows you to flush your toilets. There's a chimney. There's an attic access hatch. Any number of these things, and there's hundreds of them. They're all leaking just a little bit. And they were never required to be air sealed when the house was built. So there's enormous opportunities, and that's just a kind of a smattering of them. So this is heat loss. To answer your point, this is about heat loss. Where are you losing the actual heat through this? 8% is going down, 12% is drafts and ventilation and drafts, 33% is going out your walls, 26% out your roof, 18% out your windows. So it's pretty easy, relatively speaking, because we can access your attic. Anyone can. You can access your attic and you could pull up the fiberglass and you could do some air sealing and you could add more insulation. It's really hard to do the walls because that assembly is already built and there's something solid on each side of it. And it's harder to make it thicker because then you have to move all the windows and so forth. So even though there's a great opportunity there, they're a little bit harder to get to. Windows, yeah, they can make a difference for sure. Floors are increasingly important because many people are switching to heat pumps. How many people have switched to heat pumps? Everybody? Excellent. When did any of you have a central heating system in your basement before you made that switch? Okay, great. Did you notice once you switched to heat pumps that your first floor got a whole lot colder?
Yeah.
Yeah, call it out.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Did your heat pump install? They probably told you that, right? They told you that was going to happen. No. It's not because they were mean or nasty or didn't like you. They didn't know. Because they didn't have the building science knowledge to understand what was going to happen when they changed one part of your home as an energy system and how that's going to affect the other. I can't tell you, almost every customer that I meet who's had some of the heat pump switch, I said, what do you want most? I want warm floors. Great. What are we going to do? We're going to put some insulation in your floor system. I never needed that before. No, because you had an oil-breathing dragon in the basement and it gave off a lot of heat. And so the basement was much closer in temperature to the living space, and heat always travels from high concentration to low concentration. So if the air is 2 degrees warmer in the living space than the basement, there's going to be a little bit of heat transfer. Once you take out the heating system, now this wants to be 50 and this wants to be 70. Whoa, we just increased that transfer by orders of magnitude. So it's huge. We can solve these problems, though. They're not insurmountable. But it makes sense to make your house heat pump ready, or else you end up buying 3 instead of 2. And you could have put that other money into your floor system and been actually really comfortable with 2 heat pumps for the same expense as the 3 and be uncomfortable. So this is the magic of demand, supply, and source. Yes,
So in a basement that, let's just say has a 4th floor. I'm not talking about the brick floors that many of us have had, but a 4th floor, it's still pretty cold because it's right on top of that 50-degree dirt.
Yeah.
Would you then put like a frame structure with,
I wouldn't,
I mean, what would you do for that basement floor? Would you do anything?
yeah, so basically, no. There's, unless you're gonna try and make that heated living space, it really, the
No.
ground is gonna keep it, all the pipes and things in there for the most part from freezing. Unless you have a lot of what we call exposure above grade. And in your house, you walk out of the basement, you've got a walkout door. So that's a little different than many houses where there's just a foot or two of brick or concrete or cement block or something that you see around it. So the idea is, just like when you go out in the outdoors, you want to get something on a jacket that fits you well. Why? Because if I go outside with a jacket that's an extra large size, I'm not extra large. I might have twice as much insulation as a small jacket that I need, but it's billowing around me and it's not doing much good. I want that insulation right up next to the thing that I'm trying to keep warm. So if you're heating with heat pumps and we want to keep you warm, that's why we put the insulation in the ceiling of the basement or the floor of the first floor, so to speak.
Just want to point out that if you have a heat pump water heater down there, you're making the basement even colder, so.
Correct, absolutely. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of nuance. I want to show you this. This is a thermal image, us energy geeks, we love the toys. And we've got thermal cameras. This is a thermal image of a house here in Camden up on Washington Street. And the outside temperature is 25 degrees, and the histogram doesn't sort of show this. Oh, no, actually, sorry, I'm wrong. It's 7 degrees outside. And the exposed concrete foundation is 27 degrees. I think that's the warmest temperature there. So it's 20 degrees above the outdoor temperature. And that's on the outside of the foundation. That's how much heat is being bled out into Camden in this before and after photo. So there are ways that you can see what's actually happening. And that is often quite convincing. But long story short, if we think seriously and work hard to reduce demand, then we've got a much smaller supply problem, and then we've got a smaller source. Meaning we need fewer solar panels on our roof, or we need a smaller share in the solar farm, or what have you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you learned tonight that you didn't know before? Just raise your hand if there's something you learned. All right, pretty sharp crowd here. Okay, so some of the ways that it can be done, this is in insulation in the basement on the wall. It can be very pretty. This is rigid foam. It works well on poured foundations, and attics. We add lots of loose, fluffy stuff. This is a pull-down attic staircase, and there's some storage space that many of us want to have. And then a lot of big piles of fluffy stuff underneath the or fluffy stuff there above the ceiling. This is distribution. So if you have a hot air system of any kind, whether it's heat pumps or other, insulating to keep that heat and direct it where you want it to go is important. They do have, some people have heat pumps in their basement or a furnace. And again, not letting it heat that basement. You don't need the basement warm. So make sure you get that all the way up into your living space. And I love to end with this one. Can anyone tell me what they think that is on there? Someone said it.
Diaper.
It's a sweat sock. Yeah. So believe me, there is nothing that you have in your house that we haven't seen before. Kinds of ways. I mean, think about that. You know, someone's like, "Oh, I think the pipe's hot, I'll keep it, keep it insulated." So, but did that work? Sure. Was it perfect? No. Was it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. And the most important thing that we can do is take that first step, or convince, cajole, encourage, praise those others that do the same thing. Because once you've taken that first step, you're much, much more likely to take the second and the third step. So I'd encourage you to talk to your friends and neighbors, share the message of the home as an energy system and how it can work better for you and for our planet. And quite frankly, it's better for the economy of the state of Maine. Because again, we're not making any oil or propane here. It's all imported. Thank you.
Are there questions for Brian?
Yeah, if not,
Well, I want to make sure there's time for the window thing, but did you say at the beginning that you could save like you sort of said outright that 75% is savable?
Yep.
Conservable?
yeah, when you conceive of, say, the house that I purchased in 2006, it was almost entirely fueled by oil. My hot water and my heating was all oil. And I started by insulating, then I ended up switching to, I added solar to heat my hot water. I added tubes on the roof that heated a big tank in my basement. So I stopped heating my water that way. And then I insulated and air sealed the heck out of it. And I reduced my building's energy demand by 50%. And I didn't even switch out the heating system. If I had switched to a more efficient heating system like heat pumps, then I probably could have cut that 50% by 50%, which would have been that last 25%. I would have reduced my energy use by 75%. I'm old school. I grew up in Vermont. I'm a wood chuck, so I burn wood. Yes.
Is there any, is there any real value to just switching out an old oil furnace to a newer, higher tech one?
Yes, so you can get more efficient. Most oil burning devices are around 80 to 85% efficient. Meaning only 15% of the heat goes out the chimney. But then you've got distribution losses. So whatever pipes or ducts are going in, you may lose another 25% that way and so forth. So you could go to a high efficiency boiler and you might go to 90% efficient. But unless you have high-tech emitters or radiation system, which means you're not going to get all of the benefits because those typical baseboard heaters that many of us have in our house are designed to run at a very high temperature, and your condensing boiler that you purchase that is rated for up to 96% efficient
Doesn't have.
can only deliver 96% efficient if you've got a really high-tech distribution system that you probably don't have in your older house.
Are there such?
Yes, it's called radiant floors, and there are some other emitters or radiators that do that, but it means switching out all of those things. And for most people, it's going to be far more efficient and far more cost-effective to switch out and go to heat pumps.
It's also the whole old age boiler. If it's only 10 or 15 years old, it probably doesn't make much sense. But if you're an older house, it might have a 50-year-old boiler, and there's been huge improvements from 50 years ago, even using plain old oil burner technology.
Yeah, and if you go to Efficiency Maine's website, they've got some wonderful calculator tools that you can click on and kind of compare things. But again, that's something that loss of efficiency due to your radiators is something that is often poorly understood and often not disclosed when you go to get a new system. They say, hey, it's 96% efficient. You're just not going to get that. You can't get it if you've got older style radiators. But I want to make time for our
We've got
other
this.
folks.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And here's Connie from WindowDressers, and we're gonna let Connie go along and we'll have time for questions.
Which? You can just use the arrow keys here.
Oh, yeah, okay. Great. Well, thank you, Brian, for that great introduction to why we need window dressers. Because we are all about addressing unnecessary waste. And that's like the whole point of window dressers. And it's a lot simpler topic because it's really only talking about windows. So as you know, we build insulating window inserts. And actually, Barbara, could you bring up those, I forgot to bring up those. All the windows are down there. Let's see, go this way. Okay, so our vision, thanks so much. And the big one too. So our vision is that every community will have access to affordable insulated windows. And the goals of this presentation are primarily to give you information about window dressers, but also to encourage volunteer participation in the program and also perhaps inspire consideration of monetary donation. But this presentation goes to a lot of different audiences. But we're going to mainly focus on providing information about window dressers inserts. So this is a picture of the inserts. How many of you have inserts or have seen them? Oh, most of you. Okay, so maybe I don't need to do this presentation. Oh, okay, great. Okay. So this is an example of the insert, and this is, where's this thing? Okay. So this is what they look like in person. There's a wooden frame, and then there's 2 layers of plastic that's shrink wrapped so that they're tight and also easy to make the shrink wrapping not only makes them fit better, but they also are more configured that way. And then the foam around the outside allows for a nice, neat pressure fit in the window. So they're inserted into from the inside, as opposed to many storm window situations where you have to do it more from the outside. So here's another example of the sizes. They can be, some we've done very small ones, and when we do those, everyone thinks they're so cute. Last year we did 20 little tiny ones for a church, and some of them are huge, and it really requires 2 people to manage them. So it's quite a variety of size that we see. So Window Dressers is a nonprofit organization. Oops, very sensitive. Dedicated to building these custom insulating window inserts. We use volunteer power. We do have, oh boy. We do have 6 paid administrative people. Now that we've gotten to serve almost Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, we need some more administration. Now this is just, maybe it's on a timer somehow. Oh dear. I've got to talk fast. This Dick Dugan.
Go back to the earlier.
Yeah.
I think maybe only that one is on a timer for some reason.
Okay. Okay. So see, okay, so we started
We'll stop it.
it started with me
No.
right here in Rockland. Dick Cadogan, his church did an energy audit and found that the 20 big windows in the vestibule were leaking a tremendous amount of energy. And he went to a workshop, I think in New Hampshire, and what?
Rostada, they were doing this.
Oh, Darriscott?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so he went to this workshop and came back and built these first 20 inserts for his church in his basement. He's maybe a mechanical engineer or something, but he's a great woodworker. And so he had all the tools he needed. He built them all. He measured them all by hand and built them all. And people said, "Whoa, this is great. I really want these for my home." And then something like the next year, Frank Mundo had started a sort of like a community build, but he gathered up a group of people to build some out in Islesboro. And then the next year, maybe people who know this better can correct me, but this is basically what happened. And then the next year, they started at the UU Church, a group of people, I think from that basic community, got their windows measured by Frank and Dick. And then they were all, everyone who wanted a window, and our household was one of them, went and actually built their own windows. And then gradually it became more systematized so that the people, you didn't have to build your own windows, but we did want people to come and volunteer. So it started off in Rockland, and now it's throughout Maine and New Hampshire and part of New Hampshire and Vermont. The process, so the first thing is to assess the needs of your household for improved window insulation, considering drafts, and then order the inserts that you think you need, the number that you think you need on WindowDressers.org. And then in the spring, a trained volunteer will make a call and come out and measure your windows, and also discuss payment options and which windows maybe would be priority if you decide you don't want to do all of them the first season. Just sort of help you figure out like which would be the best windows to start with. And at that time, they would also receive payment. And then once the payment has been received, and then the order would go into the precision cut at the facility in Searsmont. And the deadline, we usually have our builds in the Camden Rockport build, the Rockland Camden build in September. So the deadline is usually in August. So if you're thinking about windows for yourself or somebody you're talking to, you can sort of hold that framework in mind. And then the frames for each window are cut and then bundled and then picked up the day before the build starts and delivered to the build site by one of the volunteers associated with that particular build. And then when the build starts, each bundle is unwrapped and the frame is built. And then the 7-step process of wrapping them starts. So I told you basic history. So on your left is Dick Cadogan, and on the far right is Frank Mundell. And maybe some people know who those other people are, I don't. So this is just a sort of, if you haven't been to a build, this is sort of what it feels like. It's like a pop-up factory, sort of. There are 7 stations set up. And it's the thing that when people talk about the build, it's interesting that the feedback they give is that it's way more fun than they thought it was going to be. And it's just, it really is really fun. I so look forward to my days there, and it's hard to leave because it's just, you know, you feel you're really doing something. And I think a lot of people come to these builds, and I've had more than one person say, you know, I'm 75 years old and I've never held a drill. And it's just great. And they just feel, it feels so great to actually produce something real that's going to do something. So some statistics, a medium-sized insert saves about 8.5 gallons of oil a year. And the typical payback is about 2 years. The inserts are around $50, $60 for medium-sized inserts. And this is showing a thermometer on the same day, same house, same side of the building, but different windows, with an insert in and without an insert. And you can see that there's over a 20-degree difference in the temperature right next to the window. And here's a sort of an infrared camera shot that was discussed before. The red areas, and this is on a cold day, so the red areas are showing the heat coming out of the windows in the door area. And then on the your right side is with the inserts in, showing much less red coming out, or much less heat being lost. So over the 10 years, WindowDressers started in 2010. So in the last 15 years, over 44,000 tons of CO2 have been saved. And this is about the same as taking over 9,000 cars off the road. So I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it. And here's a bunch of data, which basically is showing each year how much CO2 has been saved, how much has been saved financially.
Is that statewide?
This is throughout all the WindowDressers, all 3 states.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So this statistic is from counting 2024. So volunteers will have built over 78,000 custom-made insulating inserts, which is a lot of windows, you know, really, it's really a lot. And the statistic is that between 25 and 35% are to low-income families for little or no cost, but actually the Rockland build, it's closer to 40%. So we really, the goal is that financial situation is not a reason not to get inserts. And that we really are committed to increasing the funding that we have available for everyone to have access to them. And for, with the measures that go out, do you have this discussion with people about how much, what the cost will be? And it's really not, they don't have to show financial statements or anything like that. It's anyone who's on any kind of food or heating, energy assistance is clearly going to be able to have up to 10 or 12 free inserts per year. And other people who feel like it's just too much just can make a donation of what they feel they can afford that year and still get and start off with 10 or 12 inserts. Yes.
Is there any sort of like work exchange, like you can get in, like I'm thinking in the lens of energy coaching, if people maybe don't feel comfortable just accepting things,
Yeah.
want some sort of exchange. Is there like a volunteer hours? Or
Well, we ask that everybody who gets inserts volunteers in the build. Now, not everybody does that, and there's no forcing people to do it. But a strong commitment along those lines is always helpful. And we don't have any, guidelines for that, and we don't have any special expectations that we make. But it is a way for people that feel that they really can only donate a small amount of money to, like you're saying, to feel like they really are contributing. We always need volunteers. We never have enough volunteers. It always gets done, but it's always better to have, 8 to 12 volunteers a shift, and that often doesn't happen. So that is a great way. And once somebody comes for 1 or 2 sessions, they get skillful in the different steps, and then they can really contribute by teaching. And so I think a lot of people feel, everyone feels great when they can contribute, but I think that that's something that can be brought out, is that if you go to several sessions of volunteer, then you can contribute extra by being able to be a teacher. And so that's really helpful. And that's a great question. So we have over 57 builds now. So it started here at Rockland, and in the last 15 years, it's gotten up to 57. And they range from doing like 100 inserts to we do 500 or 600 here. We're one of the biggest builds. Belfast is another big build, and down in Portland, they have some big builds. So it just depends on the size of the community and the need and the age of the homes in the community. So, and this statistic is based on last year. Cumulatively, there's been over 4,000 inserts given free to low-income homes. So signing up for inserts is going to WindowDressers.org. And this is what the homepage looks like. And just go to inserts, see at the top there. And then it'll just take you through the process of organizing how many inserts you want. Now, usually what people do is just look around their house and say, oh boy, I could use 20 inserts. And then you start thinking about the price and how many you really want to pay for in a certain year. And when the measures come out, they will help each family decide like what's the right amount of inserts and which ones might be a priority for them to think about for the first year if they don't want to do all of them. So I did mention the ordering process, just requesting them, then get measured, and then sign up for your shifts of volunteering and pay for your inserts and participate in the community build. And then we try to have people be able to pick up the inserts that they've ordered at the time that they do their volunteer work. It doesn't always work. We do it alphabetically. So we if you're an A person, you can volunteer early and probably get your inserts. You know, what has been telling for me sometimes is when I call people up to say your inserts are ready and they say, oh, where are they? And I want to say, oh, they're the same place you did your volunteer work. So and so this is the process. They're custom measured using a laser measuring tool. And the measures go out in in teams of 2, and they measure each twice. This is what everyone knows in carpentry. What do you do after your first measure? Measure twice, measure again. And here is the entering into the computer and measuring. Talked about this. So this is the last year's payment, fee schedule. And, or I should say this year's. For us, our bill has already happened, so I feel like it's last year, but this is this year's payment schedule. So you can have them either in white or pine, and the white is sort of a, what do you call it? It's a primer, more like a primer coat. It's so when people have beautiful white woodwork in their house, it's not going to match that shiny white. It will be whiter than pine, but just for people to know that it's more like a primer. I mean, it's definitely white, but it scuffs easily, and we'd have to do a lot of touch up. So I just think that it's important for people who are talking about this with people to know that, and I don't mean to particularly downplay it, but just that the fact that it's not, you know, the way you paint woodwork, you know, it's really just a white. To me, it looks like a primer coat. So you can see that if you order, you know, 10 large windows, that's $600. You know, it's a hefty sum. So if you had more than that, and some of you I know here have ordered more windows than that, can be a lot.
Can I step back for a second?
Yeah.
Because your value prop here is that you're coming into a house and offering somebody who either has old windows that historically wants to keep them or can't afford to replace their windows at $1,000 pop.
Right.
For immediate. So that's the premise is how to insulate those windows.
Right.
Without having to spend $1,000
Right.
to replace.
Right.
Okay. You didn't start that way, and I just wanted to kind of bring it back.
Oh,
to
okay, thank you.
Here's the value prop. Why would you do this?
Right, right. And even other interior insulating window products are much more expensive that are on the market, you know, that are not actual storm windows for $1,000, but you know, they're much more expensive than this.
How long do they last? Sorry, they last more than one season.
Oh yeah, they will last up, but usually about 10 years. And depending on how you care for them, and if you have cats in your house or young children, that will decrease the life expectancy of these windows. And some people have difficulty with storage and can't have a hard time finding a good place to store them, and they get damaged easily. The foam that has been used in the last 2 or 3 years actually seems to be holding up, maybe 5 years. Seems to be holding up a little better. What's happening is a lot of people find that the windows are fine, but the foam from 10 years ago is deteriorating. And a lot of people come in and say, all I need is the foam. And we're working on actually having a package that is just the foam, because it's not that easy to locate that kind of insulating foam that's, yes, adhesive back.
A question about, like, I guess, building, if you got a window insert and then was able to switch to double pane glass, would that window insert still fit in that window?
As long as there's a sill, there has to be an available frame inside. So, you know, it needs to be about at least an inch deep. So as long as that's not taken up by the new window, you could still use it. Yeah.
What is the largest dimension you can do? You do 6 by 6 foot?
I do not know the answer to that. 6, I don't think we've done 6 foot. Oftentimes what happens across a French door or something like that, where it's huge. Is that what you're thinking of, something like that?
Well, I got several. One is a double door, the other one just they've got window panes, but before the frame is about 5.5 feet square, maybe 6. 5 by-
Yeah, we do have plastic that is pretty close to that. I'm not sure exactly where the cutoff is, but what's commonly done is they put two together so that there is a center piece.
It isn't. Oh, doesn't.
No, it does not.
Oh, okay.
No.
That helps.
They just put foam on the one side, so it doesn't do that, so it's a stable centerpiece. But we've made some, let's see, I would say we've made them this wide. I mean, almost wider than I can carry, right? So it's close, yeah.
I know that it keep heat in, but does it keep cool air in and like?
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
The summertime.
Oh, yeah, we keep ours in all year. There's a couple windows that we want to open, but in, the part of the house, we just keep them in. Especially where your windows don't open anyway, they just stay in.
Just one other thing to add is that for our inserts, even beyond the heat, it was the drafts that we really noticed the difference. It's huge.
That's the most common thing that people say about the effect is they notice that it feels more comfortable. And I think it's the draft that, as you're saying, that you might not even realize that's what it was. It was keeping you chilly, was the moving of the air. But people just say that, I guess it's warmer, but it just feels better in the house. So this is after the dimensions go into the cut facility in Searsmont, they get cut, it's cut, computerized cut facility. I understand it's called CNC. Computerized, I'm not sure what they stand for though.
Computer numerical control.
Oh, thank you very much. I should have that in there for my own, on my notes here. And then they are wrapped, then there are each window insert is the 4 wooden pieces are wrapped and labeled, and each window has the person's name on it and the dimensions of that window, so that in case they do get messed up, they can be put back together. And then they're transported, with a U-Haul to the build facility. And a lot of the builds are, like I said, a little shorter, 5 to 7 days. Ours here have usually been closer to 2 weeks. We schedule them for 2 weeks, and then oftentimes we get going faster than we think, and they get done a little bit sooner. But we schedule them for 10 days to 2 weeks. And right now we've been at the American Legion Hall in Camden. It's been a great facility, and they really have been very generous in donating their space. So each volunteer is taught 1 or maybe 2 steps of the process. And each of the jobs has what we call a jig, which has been developed over the years to make the process smoother and also to systematize and the quality of the outcome. Not sure why this is happening, but the shift supervisors are the people who, myself and one other person are the main shift supervisors. And then we have a crew of people that have come to a number of builds and have gotten training, and they are sort of the shift assistants that people can ask questions and will help do the teaching. And then we have the volunteers. And as I was mentioning before, a lot of times volunteers that come to do their windows come to 1 or 2 or 3 shifts, and pretty soon they're really able to do the training. And that's so helpful. Once the build gets going, people start coming back, and getting things started is a lot easier because you have people at each site that already know how to do it, and they can train people. The very beginning, Chris and I are running around trying to train all 7 stations, but.
A few more minutes, just.
Okay.
So you know.
Okay, thank you. And then this is assembling the wooden frames. They're glued and screwed together. And then white tape is put on, adhesive back, 2-sided tape. And then the plastic wrap is put on one side, more tape is put on. The backing is taken off, and then the second side is put on. And then the whole thing is shrink wrapped so that the wrinkles come out, and also it becomes more clear looking through it. and then a piece
So
of,
that's the part you do with the dryer, right?
right,
Yeah.
but now it's really fancy because we have the heat gun. Sort of, it's like a hairdryer, but it's a fancy one, is in a device, and then you just slide it underneath it, instead it used to be like a hairdryer, yeah, right. And then clear tape envelops the whole, you know, the plastic, and then finally the foam is put on. And this is classically what it looks like, things going on every square foot of the room. I don't know what this is. Okay, so the volunteers usually sign up for for the 4-hour shifts. That's usually in our build is 4:30 to 12, 8:30 to 12:30 and 1 to 5. And depending on how many inserts you have, we hope that you'll sign up for 1 shift per 3 to 5 inserts that the person has ordered. We serve lunch. We look for volunteers to make lunch, and but we somehow, no matter, if we don't get volunteers, we get it from somewhere. But there's always lunch, and yeah. And so the final thing is signing up on signup.com, which is the organization that we use to get to organize the volunteers for the builds. Okay.
I can attest that Connie runs a very good build. She is very, very